Hello, BookTube. I thought we'd go over some recent reads of mine and talk about them a bit. Some of the stuff that I have been reading since last we talked. Actually, a good deal of what I've been reading because a couple of the things slowed me down and took a lot of cross-referencing and a lot of pondering. Not the first one. Not the first thing that I want to show you. The first thing I want to show you is well known. I've mentioned it on this channel many, many times. Uh, it's this. It's Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein, which I found in a little free library. Somebody had dunked coffee on it and thought that was reason enough to abandon the copy. And when I saw it in a little free library, I realized that I don't at the moment have a print and paper copy of this thing, and for some reason that still has some sort of merit with me. That still has some sort of significance. It shouldn't. It's dumb. This place is only finite in space, and it is absolutely crammed to the rafters with printed paper books. And yet, when I want to read them, I don't tend to go for this format. I tend to go for a Kindle or my iPad. But I grabbed this and I read my way through it, and apparently this is going to be an annual thing. When I finished it, especially the weird third act where uh, where Michael Valentine Smith becomes a kind of megachurch fundamentalist preacher, uh, and takes the quasi theological philosophy of the old ones who raised him on Mars and makes it into a mantra for the middle of the 20th century when this thing was written, but it's so much the 21st century. It's so much social media, which is that thou art God. That this is a fundamentalist religion in which the ultimate ring of awareness is that you are your own God, which is the little gods theology of the New Apostolic Revolution or Reformation or whatever. The little gods theology of the big mega churches in all across the United States is that. It is essentially that. The last time I read this, I think it was at the beginning of this year or at the end of last year. I guess I'm going to read this every year for the rest of my life. The last time I read it, I concentrated on the science fiction. It's a science fiction novel. It's one of the most famous science fiction novels ever written. So you'd think that's all I'd concentrate on. But no, I find something new to concentrate on every time I reread this, which I guess means that it's a novel written on a resonance for me. I'm sure that you have novels like that, or works of nonfiction like that, where regardless of their objective merit or lack thereof, as I know that objectively this is a sloppy novel, but regardless of that, I'm sure you know the phenomenon where you encounter a book where you can go back to it an infinite number of times. And this must be one of those books for me. I would never have thought it, but I read it every year, it seems, and every year I concentrate on something different. Sometimes I concentrate on the sociological aspects. Sometimes I concentrate on the sexism. Or is it sexism? Sometimes I try to psychoanalyze the author through various interpolations that he puts in the book. And the last time I read it, last year, I concentrated on the science fiction. Uh, what can this main character do? What can he not do? What are his superpowers and where do they come from and how do they work? And this time around, I concentrated on that, on religion and on specifically on the last quarter of the book, which for the whole time that I've been reading this thing, I have thought of as the weakest part of the book. I concentrated on that this time and really enjoyed it. Maybe that is all that this boils down to, is that I just really enjoy this novel. I enjoy it far more than anything else this author wrote, even The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, which is, objectively speaking, much stronger. It's constructed much stronger. Anyway, that's the first thing, is a reread for no idea how many times. And this next one is also a reread. I got the paperback of The Freaks Came Out to Write by Tricia Romano. It's about the Village Voice. I read this last year when it came out and really enjoyed it, but boy, oh boy, did I enjoy it even more the second time. So this may be another one of those books, only this time nonfiction. Because this is not only, I would say, the final word on the history of the Village Voice, which a lot of you will be too young to remember, but also just bursting at the seams with narrative joy. It's not just a great history of the Village Voice. It's a great history of the Village Voice that would have had any of the Village Voice's signature writers saying, That's good stuff. And they wouldn't have been saying it because they're in the story. They would have been saying it because this is how they wanted all nonfiction to be written. So I really, really enjoyed it. Reading it in the paperback and loving it so much made me wish that I'd kept the hardcover. Because I will certainly go back to this. But it was great. Then I read something by Claire Jackson. I was duly impressed. I don't know that I really knew this author's name. Now she will be on a list for me to look for. And this is The Mirror of Great Britain, her biography of James I of England, who is a vilified and trivialized subject for usually in historical accounts. People don't usually give him much credit. They usually consider him to be an imbecile, a lech, maybe a drunkard, and it's amazing what the difference a picture can do. I thought of this when I read recently Anna Whitelock's new book, The Sun Rising, about James overseeing the overseas expansion, the international expansion of his country, which he wanted to call Great Britain. And I noticed when I was reading that book, getting ready to review it, I reread it, and I noticed that what a psychological effect the picture on the cover was having on me. The picture on the cover shows a much later engraving of a very handsome James, and this is the same way. Here is a smart, insightful, shrewd monarch, a survivor, someone who has big ideas. I remember there was a biography of James probably 15 years ago. It was before we were talking to each other. It was called Majesty, only it was T-I-E instead of T-Y. That was also a renovation, one of the earliest versions that I've seen in recent memory of a renovation of the reputation of James I. And that was just amazing to watch that author hammer through all the stuff that he could demonstrate was propaganda. And ever since then, I've had a big question mark over the figure of James I, and been kind of waiting for a big definitive biography. This might be it. This might be that book. I need to read it again. I will probably read it again at the end of the year. But I really, really enjoyed it. So it was a good further exploration of what we actually know about this guy and his reign. Then a big volume, one of the two volumes that was slowing me down for the recent reads that I'm doing here. The reason that the number here isn't higher. This is not all the books that I read since last we talked, because I'm leaving out a lot of the indie stuff that I read for work. In fact, I'm leaving all the indie stuff out that I read for work, and that's a lot. That's one a day, sometimes two a day. So I'm leaving out all of those. I'm leaving out a few egregious rereads. Stuff there's no we're getting to the point where A Stranger in a Strange Land is an egregious reread, but I mean stuff that there's no need for me to talk about it at all. But of the stuff that I'm not leaving out, there were two things that slowed me down. Two things where I intentionally slowed myself down, where I wanted to really soak them in. And this was the first of those two. This was the Selected Letters of John Updike. Selected, but it's still a big volume. And it was, this is edited by James Schiff, who pulled all these things together. These letters are the smallest tip of the iceberg when it comes to all the correspondence that Updike wrote. He was a major literary figure. He is no longer. The prediction that I started making a long, long, long time ago, when he was a giant alive who could do no wrong and who everyone wanted and loved. People wanted to carve him on the literary Mount Rushmore. And at the time, all those decades ago, I was the only person I knew saying, nope, this whole afflatus is being kept together by him. The minute he is talentless, his fiction is terrible. The minute he's gone and can't sustain it anymore, one by one, it will start to drop away. Reprint houses, out of nostalgia for the good old days, might reprint him, but no one will read him. And I have been proven right about that, and I will continue to be proven right until he is just forgotten. And no matter what any of you think, I am right when I make that same prediction about other authors, most especially Stephen King. Most especially Stephen King. Oh, Stephen King. Huh. Oh, wait, I read about him in school in a footnote. He was a 20th century horror writer. You don't think that's possible. You think he changed the entire world. You think that molecules are named after him. But that is true. He is Updike. he will, when he is gone, his reputation will go into the grave a minute later. And I was right about Roth. I was right about Mailer. I was right about Updike. So I am right about Stephen King. But anyway, Updike, when he lived in that era, and that, I don't know, you young people are not going to know or even recognize what that is, because there's no computer on that desk. That thing that he's in front of is a manual typewriter. And I had one at my desk as well. I don't even sit at my desk anymore. But I had one at my desk as well, a manual typewriter and a mess. I would never allow my desk to get that messy because I wouldn't get anything done if I did. But with pending work and outgoing on either side, plenty of foolscap or business paper, plenty of correct type for when you make mistakes and you need to correct it without just redoing the page, and an address book and a reference. He has his reference table behind him there. Mine was in front of me, so I could just reach ahead for it. And I'm sure that Updike started every day the way I did, which was at that desk, at that typewriter, pounding away at correspondence. Think about how many emails you send in a day. Maybe you don't send that many emails in a day. I send thousands of emails in a day. And I consider it the greatest of God's blessings other than my e-reader. It is unbelievable. It is what we all dreamt of for decades. Imagine if I could just send this message somehow directly to its recipient at light speed. Imagine if I could just somehow do that. And when they wrote back, I didn't have to wait 4 days for it to get to me. I instead would get it immediately. And maybe they want to send me a picture that they took that morning. Well, they don't have to take the whole roll of film to the drugstore, wait 5 days for it to get done, hope that it comes out right, and then pay to have a copy of it made because you want to keep the original, and then send me the copy tucked in an envelope, and maybe the envelope is turned back to you because you didn't put enough postage on it, so it comes back to you after 5 days instead of getting to me. You're going to put it out of the envelope, put new postage on it, send it to me again, then it gets to me. Maybe it gets those photos get wrinkled or jammed or ripped when someone's cramming them through the mailbox slot. I was just saying those things reminds me of all that. I had to do that all day, every day. And I had to do this all day, every day. And I had a strict routine. I'm sure that Updike did as well. For me, it was always business before pleasure. So I would do business correspondence first. Writing to publishers, writing to publicists, writing to editors, writing to the gas company, the phone company. I don't think you're right about this, or I'm enclosing a check or whatnot. Writing to everybody. Business first, and then pleasure. Typed letters for pleasure. Personal correspondence. And then the very peak of that ladder, the very tip of that iceberg, was personal correspondence, but it was handwritten. So I would leave the typewriter then, I would leave the desk then, and write in an easy chair. I'm sure that Updike did the same thing, and I'm sure they did it every day. So when you say selected here, you really mean selected. There are probably 10 times as many letters out there. I, myself, as I told the publicist for this book, who's mentioned in this book, I myself got 2 letters from Updike when I was virtually unknown in the first stage of my reviewing career. Long before I stopped, I savaged 2 of his books on 2 separate occasions. And sure enough, he wrote to the newspaper. It was 2 separate newspapers. He wrote to the newspaper in both cases. In one of they were very brief letters. They were very angry. They were very petulant. They were already very entitled. Who do you think you are, running negative criticism from one of my novels? And one of those letters, he referred to me as an attack dog, and I took that very well. The editor that handed me the letter said, "This is going to put a smile on your face, even though it's a complaint," and he was right, because I was referred to as an attack dog. In other words, I look forward to more Updike correspondence, because this was really enjoyable to read. I've never had, and I have never uttered much of a complaint about the man when he is not writing fiction. Whether it's his book reviews or his book essays, or now his letters. I have no objection to him when he's not writing fiction. He can write English well. And this is one of the books that slowed me down, because I was really poring over it. I was really appreciating the editorial work involved here, and also chasing down some of the rabbit holes. My literary world, the time that I spent and learned about in what Gore Vidal referred to as the book chat world, precisely coincides with Updike's career. So this felt awful personal to me, and it also felt like something where I wanted to chase down every little hint of a stray ball. So I slowed down with this. I don't know how I would recommend it. I am going to write about it later on in the month. I don't know how I would recommend it. Letter collections for me are inherently interesting anyway, but I don't know that that would be true for a reader born in the 21st century. A reader born in the 21st century will have no idea of what we now refer to as snail mail correspondence, and a reader born in the 21st century will also, thankfully, have no idea of Updike. So I don't know how much interest this will have for a lot of you. Some of you did grow up in the age of putting a folded piece of paper into an envelope, placing a stamp on it that you lick, and then walking that to a metal box that's riveted to the sidewalk so that a pedophile can come along later in the day and collect it to mail somewhere. Some of you will be familiar with that world. But I don't. If you aren't familiar with that world and you aren't familiar with Updike, I don't know how intrinsically interesting this would be. I don't think I'm in a position to know, because of how intrinsically interesting it is to me. Okay, then I found another thing in another little free library. My little dog has a lot of patience with me when it comes to little free libraries. I found an illustrated little edition of The Talisman by Sir Walter Scott. This is the author of Ivanhoe. And this is one of his novels. This is a historical novel about the Crusades. And I love Sir Walter Scott, but talk about being gone. Even Ivanhoe is gone. And it's not just a question of whether or not you are rogering your secretaries, or other people's secretaries, or other people's wives, or other people's daughters, or, in the 1980s, other people's granddaughters. It's not a question of that, like Updike. Here it's a question of style that leads to Sir Walter Scott being unread, almost unreadable in the 21st century, even though he has corker stories to tell. The story at the heart of this novel is a corker of a story. But let me give you an example. This is the book that I'm talking about. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. Ere they remounted to resume their journey, the Christian knight again moistened his lips and dipped his hands into the living fountain, and said again to his pagan associate on the journey, I would I knew the name of this delicious fountain, that I might hold it in my grateful remembrance, for never did water slake more deliciously a more oppressive thirst than I have had this day. It is called in the Arabic language, answered the Saracen, by a name which signifies the diamond of the desert. It is well so named, replied the Christian. My native valley hath 1,000 springs, but not of one of them shall I attach hereafter such precious recollection as to this solitary fount, which bestowed its liquid treasures where they are not only delightful, but near indispensable. You say truth, said the Saracen, for the curse is still on yonder sea of death, and neither man nor beast drinks of its waves, nor of the river which feeds without filling it, until this inhospitable desert be passed. That is grand, but it is also incomprehensible when it comes to just reading pleasure in the 21st century. So I enjoyed this. I doubt that I will keep the trade paperback that I found. It was just, I like to honor the serendipity of such things. So if I see something like that, I like to give it at least a temporary home, give it an adoring read, and then I will release it into the broader ecosystem of the Brattle Bookshop, where it stands a better chance of being found by a sympathetic reader who will keep it forever than it does moldering in a little free library being pecked at by birds and chewed on by squirrels. So I grabbed it and I reread it. I don't know how many times I've read The Talisman, and I love it, but the whole time I was reading it, I was thinking, I think your day is done. Then I read a piece of true crime. 2025 has been a fairly good year for frequency of true crime publications. There has been no masterpiece and no systematic, comprehensive history of any true crime case this year that I know of. Instead, there have been a lot of autobiographical takes, side looks, fragmentary aspects of true crime cases, especially serial killers, which is the thing that drew my attention now that I'm a bit of an amateur expert on serial killers. Uh, the crop of such books has been steady, but they have been odd reading experiences. They haven't been what I would expect and what I guess I would want, which is a really good, down in the weeds, detailed, insightful, comprehensive history of these cases. Instead, in almost every case, uh, the idea seemed to be, you already know the case, you already know the details. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to fill you in on extra details about one aspect of the case. And in every one of those books, along the way, you do get something of a history of the whole, but always in service to something else. Whether it's Murderland and the service to something else is, was there an environmental factor in a lot of these serial killers, or what was it, The Scientist and the Serial Killer, where you're trying to identify one of the last victims of the Candyman, who had unidentified victims. You need to somehow, all those victims died before DNA and DNA based forensics, so there were unknown victims, and I believe that the Candyman also has victims whose remains have never been found. Or John Wayne Gacy. There was a book by the daughter of the young woman who gave her coat to John Wayne Gacy's final victim minutes before Gacy brought him home. And her coat was found at the crime scene with a photo receipt inside it that definitively linked Gacy to the victim and allowed the whole case to start to crack open. It was what's widely viewed as a key piece of evidence. Lots of doubt has been cast on whether or not that evidence was fairly obtained or even legitimate. But that's the sort of thing I'm talking about, where you are in the course of that book, you're going to get offhand a description of the case, but you're mainly going to be looking at it through one specified lens. And the same thing happened here with Tien Ho. This is his book, The People versus the Golden State Killer. And it's about the Golden State Killer, but it's mainly about the gigantic efforts involved in finally discovering him, in bringing him to justice after decades. And I went into it a little bit skeptically because when it comes to a serial killer, and the Golden State Killer was about as bad as they get, when it comes to a serial killer, law enforcement is at a bit of a disadvantage, a huge disadvantage, in fact, especially if they're doing their investigating before universal surveillance. I'm sure that somewhere right now, some camera in my neighborhood is actually able to see me doing this filming. It's unthinkable. It's unthinkably dystopian. We've all just grown accustomed to it, but it is dystopian. Privacy is gone. It is a thing of the past. None of us experience it anymore, and people under the age of 18 don't even know what it is. It's not that they don't experience it; they don't even have the concept anymore. But when you're dealing with a serial killer, before you have universal surveillance and before you have forensics-based, DNA-based forensics, well, you're at a massive disadvantage because the serial killer knows exactly what he wants to do, and you don't. You don't have any idea. So you can't predict, you can't identify, you can't track anything like that. Usually, you can't do anything like that. Usually, you're at the serial killer's mercy, and most of them know it. Which is why they tend to taunt people, law enforcement and victims. The Golden State Killer did that. Jack the Ripper, of course, famously did that to start things off. And the law enforcement, when you come to the Golden State Killer, law enforcement doesn't look very good. He's struck with impunity for years and years, for decades. Impunity and also unbelievable, savage barbarity. And you would like to think when you're looking at the case, we'll get to that. You'd like to think when you're looking at the whole of the case, even without forensics, even without cameras everywhere, surely somebody as savage and taunting and hubristic as this guy must have left enough ordinary, everyday observational clues for the police to do a little better than what they did at finding him. It's not the case. And this author knows that, and in the case of the Golden State Killer, that deficiency where the police are simply at sea. They had no idea how to find this guy, no idea who he was, no idea of anything like that. He stopped leaving living witnesses pretty quick. and also seem to stop killing for a long time, which makes the trail go cold. Not only that, that works against your perception of law enforcement in their effectiveness. But then you have the other side of the Golden State Killer, which is a cadre, a room full of people in a basement who did not let this go. Who did not let this go. Who took advantage of every new advance in science to eventually find this guy. That is the ultimate triumph of law enforcement, of the people versus the Golden State Killer, in this story. And what this book concentrates on is the law. That element of bringing this guy to justice. This guy was not brought to justice, keep in mind. You know where I stand on the subject. This guy was not brought to justice. It would have been easy to bring him to justice. Nothing could have been simpler. Once you caught him, once DNA conclusively connected him with the crimes, once you were sure that you had the right guy because DNA connected him, physical evidence connected him, and he confessed, once you were sure of that, it's very easy to give him justice. Walk him out to a field at twilight, give him a shovel, and tell him to dig until morning. Dig a hole. Deep. Not wide, just deep. Then in the morning, tell him, I want you to stand in that hole. Climb down into it and stand. It'll come up to your shoulders. Then we're going to fill in the dirt to pack you in tight. And then we're going to have the son or the nephew or the oldest grandchild of one of your victims smash your head like a cantaloupe with a baseball bat. Just pound on it and pound on it and pound on it and pound on it until there's nothing left. Until your teeth are across the lot. Until your hair is mixed with your spinal fluid, just like your victims. And he's going to pause every once in a while so that out of a broken mouth and shattered eyes, you can beg for him to stop. And then he's going to keep going. And then when he's done, he's going to eat your lunch. You're going to bring a bagged lunch, and when he's done killing you, when your head is unrecognizable, he's going to sit down and eat your lunch. We'll all share it and tell stories. That would have been justice. But that didn't happen, of course. But still, the story here, the aftermath of the story is amazing. That all of a sudden, I remember reading about it in the newspapers, I remember thinking, what? My very first thought when this came back into the news was, the Golden State Killer is still alive? I mean, I know he wasn't caught, but he's still alive. And that is interesting. That is well done in this book. It's just, and along the way, you get the Golden State Killer story. It's just, where is the big account of these things? Where are those books? I don't know that I've read one in forever. I keep thinking about, what's his name? Rumbelow did the complete Jack the Ripper. An absolutely comprehensive book about narrating everything that is known about Jack the Ripper. But where do you get that from most other serial killers? Where is that book for the Night Stalker or the Candyman? Even John Wayne Gacy. I mean, you get Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi about Manson and the Manson family, but anyway, I had to resist. I have had to resist all year when I go at true crime books like this. I've had to resist all year the urge to wish that they were something else. This author does not intend this book to be that, and what he intends this book to be is very good. He had a ringside seat. So I enjoyed it very much. It's just all of the serial killer stuff this year has been leading me. It's always been prompting me to wish that I could see a book like that. Not the type of, here's, the compendium of the worst monsters in history. You've got a big melodramatic blood soak on the cover. These things are important. They were serious. They affected lots and lots of lives. Where are the comprehensive histories of them? Anyway, I'll move on now to John Blair. This was fascinating. This is Killing the Dead, Vampire Epidemics from Mesopotamia to the New World, where the author looks at the near universal and near universal in terms of culture and near universal in terms of chronology belief in the living dead, in the undead. I'm at the moment that I'm making this video, I am reading Bram Stoker's Dracula out loud. It's Victorian England, but you can find these stories all over. That the dead aren't really dead. That they come back, and when they come back, they are changed. They want something from the living. This author looks at the oldest historical inferences that he can draw of people thinking about that, all the way to the present day, all the way to South Central Africa, to Haiti, to anywhere, any culture where there is a rumor or a widespread panic about the dead coming back and wanting to eat people or steal their souls or steal their children or something like that. I liked it very much. I'm in the mood for it because I'm reading Dracula at the moment, but I liked it very much. I have my quibbles with books like this. Typically speaking, the tools that you need to examine something as recently as 15 years ago, where there are newspaper accounts and living survivors and all sorts of oral testimony, typically speaking, the tools you need to be good at researching all of that and then writing it are radically different from the tools you need to research ancient history in a dead language that you don't read. So surveys like this, whether it's, vampire plagues or belief in ghosts or even the history of humans sleeping, always tend to bug me. I always kind of wish that the authors had stuck to one or the other. In John Blair's case, that would clearly be the present day, something closer to the present day. The ancient stuff in here is the weakest stuff in here, but I still enjoyed it. It's still fascinating to think about, especially since you have to wonder where it comes from, right? I mean, these things don't spring out of nowhere. Partially, they spring out of the absolutely fundamental human unwillingness to believe in their own mortality. But also, you have to think that these are atavistic memories from ancient times when people could be thought dead when they weren't. Could be buried when they weren't dead. Buried with a little bell inside the coffin so that if you wake up from the swoon you were in, you can ring the bell and someone will hear you. Plus, there's also something that we don't tend to know in our modern era. Most people that I know have never seen a dead body that isn't carefully, meticulously embalmed and then reconstructed with cosmetics to look like the person is sleeping in a coffin. Most people that I know have never seen a dead body other than at a funeral home, and certainly never been around one for any length of time. And so you lose, when you do that, even in the present day with all the mortuary science that we have, you lose the knowledge of how alive a dead body can seem. They do move. They make all kinds of noises. And some of those noises can sound a lot like noises that living people make. Gas pockets start to navigate all over a corpse. They start to move all over. They become very dangerous. They can swell things. Putrefaction starts to happen. But some of those gas pockets create, as they shift, currents of air. Some of those currents of air will play along the laryngeal space. A dead body can sound very alive. It can make lots of noises, and it can move. And people don't know that. In the 21st century, people don't know that about dead bodies. And that, I think, could give rise to this near universal belief in the undead. The people who are not alive anymore because you've already buried them, that means they're not alive. But people who are not dead either because they have thoughts, desires of some kind or other. Very complicated stuff that this author doesn't know anything about. He clearly doesn't know much about, for instance, early medieval England and early medieval Ireland that had all sorts of ecclesiastical declarations, but also legal distinctions about people who were buried and then turned out to still be alive. In some parts of Northern Ireland, you could ring that bell, or you could pop up out of your coffin or whatnot. You could come out of your swoon, and your relatives would be horrified. Maybe some of them would think, oh, well, it was a mistake. A mistake was made. I'm really glad about this, but you couldn't have your property back. You couldn't go back home. Anyway, the subject is more fascinating than the author gives it credit, but even so, the book is still good. Then we'll move on to something that was a little bit of a weird twist, a booktube twist. I was watching Britta did, I think, Nonfiction November TBR or something like that, where she was holding up a bunch of books, a bunch of nonfiction that she was thinking about reading soon. And one of them was a big, fat, red paperback of The Diaries of Helen Garner. And I saw it on her video and thought, ooh, I want that. That looks really good. And then I realized I already have it, and that I've had it for a long time. It just doesn't look like that in the U.S. publication. And it isn't called The Diaries of Helen Gardner in the U.S. publication. It's called How to End a Story. This is the three collected diaries of Helen Gardner, and the third of which was called How to End a Story. And for some god unknown reason, the U.S. publisher decided, who is this, Picador? I don't even know who this is, but the U.S. publisher decided to call the whole book How to End a Story. Why, I don't know. Why call it anything? Why call this collected volume any one of the three titles of the individual volumes? Why do that? Why invite confusion that way when you could call it something else? Or not call it anything, just call it Collected Diaries. But that's what this is, big thick thing. And I skimmed it. I read a little bit of it, oh God, back in March or April when I got a copy. I skimmed it. I don't think I ever got the finished copy. I just had a paperback. And I really liked what I skimmed, but I hadn't realized that it was sitting in the back of my mind until I saw it on Britta's video. And then I went to my new release bookcase and found it and lived with it for a long time. Lived with it for a day. Reading the whole of it and really being struck by it. I think I want to write about it. It really is striking. I wouldn't say that a lot of it would fulfill your expectations when you think of a diary. A lot of it reads more like a commonplace book. Little line here and there, an observation or an overheard quote, something like that. But then there are large parts of it that do read like a diary, especially, most heart-wrenchingly, her marriage to her husband, who's just identified by a single letter. Those are almost heartbreakingly identifiable. Just an amazing evocation of what a long-term relationship is like. An evocation that is heartfelt and tragic and sometimes bitterly funny. And also, I don't want to hit this too hard. It's also an evocation that is 100,000 times more sophisticated than the evocation of exactly that thing in this author's fiction. I know I'm prejudiced in favor of nonfiction, but this is by far the most effective thing that I've ever read from this author. But I loved it. Just loved it. The odd moments that crop up over and over again, even when the author is really depressed about living in a tiny room in Melbourne, about living in Melbourne with her husband, who was a writer, and living entirely at his disposal, even though she was a writer herself. Instead, it was, no, I'm going to be writing all day, so you had best go elsewhere. You know I need the place to be quiet. You know I need the place to be by myself. And when she suggests at one point, well, how about we fix up the shed so that you can go out there and write so I don't have to leave my own home every day all day, he got petty and petulant about it. And he does not come off well in these entries at all, but neither does she in a lot of places, and she was brave enough to leave it that way. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I got the tip from Britta Bola's channel, so that was good. Then I read, this is Carolyn Hammond did the honors here. A masterful job of editing and also translating. We saw this on this channel recently, a new Loeb Classical Library edition of two writings from St. Augustine. One from the beginning of his career and one from the end of his career about Christianity, about teaching Christianity. This is the Loeb Classical Library, so you get the Latin on one side and the English on the other. Notes, an introduction, and endnotes that are really good. This was really, really good. Definitely a keeper when it comes to St. Augustine, to having a whole body of his work. And also, I think I've only read one scholarly edition of Teaching Christianity. I don't think I've ever read The Teacher, but I think I read one edition of Teaching Christianity. I'm not even sure that it was in English. It was nowhere near as good, though. The thing about this that I was really struck by was how well Carolyn Hammond gets Augustine's voice when he writes this kind of starchy rhetoric. I know that Loeb has a reputation of being just artless trots for students, but more and more recently, especially in like the last 20 years, the new translations that they come out with have art of their own. They are not soulless line-by-line trots anymore. They're much better than that. I really, really enjoyed this. Although I hate to say, was not one of the things that I was pondering. You'd think it would be, but no, it wasn't. The other thing that I was pondering, I don't think I have here on the iPad. I have it buried on the footlocker here, and that is the Journals of Camus, which has been totally preoccupying me since I got it. That was dragging. Drag sounds negative, but I was spending a lot of time with that book. A lot of time with it. So that and the Letters of Updike were the two things. But the last thing I want to show you, very much, I did not need to spend a lot of time with. It was very, very, very light, to put it mildly. This is Huang Bo Room, and this is Every Day I Read. 53 Ways to Get Closer to Books. Lovely cover here, despite the presence of cats who do not like it when you read. A lovely cover and a good book. It's a good book. It's utterly inoffensive. Here are ways that I read. I bring a book with me when I go to the grocery store in case I have to wait in line. I bring a book with me to the train station because I know I'll have to wait. I like to read in the sun. I like to read when it's raining outside. I sometimes make myself a cup of tea and read while I'm sipping it. Sometimes I watch the cats for a while, and then I remember to read. I love to read. I read because I love to read. I love to read. It's amazing the stuff that book contracts can be made of. I mean, when you're reading a book like that, an elegant, sweet, clean-hearted little book like that, how can you take offense? You can't take offense to something like that. I wasn't raging with this thing at all, but I think about other writers out there. I think about Helen Garner, for instance. If she had written a book about reading, for all I know she did. I'm not any expert on her entire bibliography, but if she wrote a book about reading, let's say that a publisher went to her. Who is this? Bloomsbury, fittingly enough. Let's say that a publisher went to her and said, Helen, we will offer you a book contract if you will write a book called Every Day I Read, 53 Ways to Get Closer to Books. We're giving you the title and we're giving you the subtitle. That's the book we want, and we want you to write it. And you've got 130 pages. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the difference between that book and this? Hell, give that same brief title and subtitle to John Updike and tell him you have 130 pages. This was totally inoffensive. I enjoyed it just fine, but I couldn't help but think about what kind of a book this would have been in the hands of a deep thinker, a serious thinker. This author clearly is not. I knew that from the novel, right? Welcome to the what is it called? Hayum Dong Bookshop? I knew it from the novel. This is not a serious author. This is someone who spends all day, every day on their cell phone. So, this is the kind of book you get as a result of that. And maybe it will speak to a demographic of readers who spend all day, every day on their cell phone. But all I could think about was what a different kind of book this could have been. I guess that's kind of a theme that runs through all of this, right? Through this I don't even know, this recent reads video is I kept thinking about what kind of a book this. Hi, baby. What you doing? What you doing? You're being a little melodramatic, aren't you? Huh? She's been wedged against me for almost 24 solid hours because my little dog does not have bodily functions anymore. She never needs to urinate. She never needs to defecate. She does not eat food. She does not drink water. She has no bodily functions anymore. She is a spirit. So you just saw a spirit. Every once in a while, as an entertainment, she will have some food or sip some water. Every once in a while when we're outside and a dog pees on something right in front of her, she will think, well, I used to know how to respond to that, so she will pee then. But anyway, that's kind of a theme. Sorry about that for this recent reads video, is constantly pining for books to be something that they weren't, which isn't fair, and I try not to do. But this is just a conversation among friends. This isn't going to happen in a review. So I'll wrap this up for now. Of course, I'd love to hear what you've been reading recently. Feel free to email me or to sound off in the comments. And so I'll wrap this up for now. This is going on quite long enough, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.